That was probably the most insane spot you have ever seen in a professional wrestling match, and likely will ever see in a professional wrestling match. I'm Luke Owen, DAD here for WrestleTalk, giving you the immediate reactions to SummerSlam 2022, the first pay-per-view under the Triple H creative era. And the main event was Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns, last man standing. Apparently the last time they're ever going to do this match. I kind of believe them for the most part, but you know, we'll see. This kind of did feel like a real end point to the feud, particularly because holy heckins, one of these spots. So the match, I'll be honest, I didn't love the match itself. I thought the match itself was most of the stuff we've seen in Brock Lesnar matches and Roman Reigns matches. And I thought they overdid the 10 count spot towards the end for the near falls, and you know, a lackluster build I don't think has particularly helped with that. However, that stuff doesn't matter. Honestly, that stuff doesn't matter one iota. I thought they did this or I thought they did that, because all that matters about this match is that spot. So if you haven't seen, what happened was, when Brock Lesnar was making his entrance, he made it about halfway down the ring, and then he down the ramp, and then he went back, and there was this big, bulldozer, I think is the word that I would use. I kind of describe it as a tractor, but either way, it was a big farmyard mechanical thing. I'm clearly a city boy, and it had like a bucket on the front and stuff. And he drives that down to the ring, and he stands on the bucket thing, and he dives off a bit after the big ring introductions, and it's just sort of sat there at ringside. And during the match, Brock knocks Roman out, and he puts him into the bucket, lifts it up, and dumps it into the ring for admittedly not a great looking spot. It was actually quite adorable how softly Roman landed from it. But then, as the match went into its final third, Brock Lesnar gets back into the truck, and he gets the bucket, and he rams it into the ring, and the ring shunts, like massively moves in one direction. I don't think that was actually supposed to happen, because he then lowers it and gets it under a lip that was there so he could lift it. I think that's what he meant to do in the first place. And he literally lifts the ring up, and it lifts up from sort of one corner. Roman's still in the ring, and Roman does this incredible tumble down the ring and out of it. It was a mind-blowing visual. One of the most spectacular things I've ever seen in a professional wrestling match. No other company on the planet could ever do something like this. It was absolutely insane. This ring, he lifted the ring up, and the visual of Roman Reigns tumbling out was spectacular. And it left this like Sullivan in our live reactions kind of described it as this Dali-esque painting, because all of a sudden this live crowd are watching a wrestling ring that's lifted up by one corner. And it's this, and then they just sort of fight in this tiny sort of corner that they've made for themselves, where they can do the rest of these 10 count spots. Paul Heyman went through a table, the Usos got involved, Austin Theory ran down, but they stopped him from cashing in. It looked like he was going to cash in at one point. I don't know quite how it would have worked if he'd cashed in. Would it have been a triple threat last man standing match? What are the rules of that? But either way, at the end, Roman hit him with a spear, Brock got back up at 9, he hit him with the belt, Brock got up at 9, hit him with another belt, Brock got up at 9, and then they hit him again with some more plunder. I think they hit him with the spear, and then they started dumping stuff on top of him, and he went down for the 10. Roman won. I believe next month it's 2 years of Roman Reigns as WWE Champion / Universal Champion. I think that's the most since Hogan back in the 80s, or in the modern era of wrestling. So it's an incredible achievement for Brock Lesnar. He will now face Roman Reigns at Clash at the Castle in September, which, like, I'm actually quite a bit of a defender of Roman Reigns with the title belts. I don't think it's as bad as some people think it is, but now I think that challenge with Drew at Clash might be the first match, certainly in a long time with Roman, where it feels like he legitimately might lose the belts. I think there's every chance that he does lose the belts at Clash at the Castle next month. Now, I think that'd be an incredible super. We'll get to that when we get to it. As a main event, as I said, I didn't overly love the main event, because it's a lot of Brock Lesnar, Roman Reigns stuff that it doesn't really work for me. Well, it did work for me. It worked for me 4 years ago, and it's now 4 years later, and seeing the same thing again doesn't quite work for me, particularly because we've been watching these two have that match again and again and again since SummerSlam last year. But that, it doesn't matter, because that spot with the ring was incredible. And that was only one thing that was worthy of talking about. There were multiple things that were worthy of talking about for this video, because this was Triple H looking to make his stamp, put his face out there. Not, not publicly, but certainly making his era known. And he did that right at the start of this show with Bianca Belair versus Becky Lynch for the Raw Women's Championship. Now, I kind of speculated that maybe they'll repeat the 26-second thing, and that'll be the way that they mirror the start of this. I was wrong, and they did it in a much, much better way. I had a great, great match. Easily match of the night. Hands down match of the night. Miles ahead of the rest of the competition match of the night. In-ring work was absolutely superb between these two women. Like, this was a wonderful way to end off their feud. And Bianca Belair won with one of the greatest KODs I've ever seen. And afterwards, Becky Lynch turned babyface. And this feud started at SummerSlam last year with Becky offering a handshake to Bianca Belair, pulling her in for the manhandle slam and pinning her in 26 seconds. And she turned babyface here by offering her a handshake and pulling her in for a hug. It was beautiful symmetry, wonderful. Oh my, I cannot express how much I love this as a finale to the Belair Becky storyline. I think it's a perfect way to end it off. And that was Becky Lynch's babyface turn. Then Bianca Belair's there standing in the ring as she's celebrating. Becky goes to the outside. And Bayley makes her return, which had been reported. It had been sort of speculated that Bayley would be here for this show, and she didn't. She made her entrance. She's not Hugger Bayley. She is still Karen Bayley, and she comes out looking incredible, by the way, looking absolutely amazing. But she wasn't alone, because out next came Dakota Kai, who was seemingly re-signed with WWE. She is now on the main roster, something that never would have happened with Vince McMahon, clearly, because he brought her up for tryouts and then never actually put her on the show. She came out and aligned herself with Bayley. And that wasn't all, because Io Shirai also returning to WWE. Remember those reports? She was basically done with WWE. She was heading back to Stardom. With Triple H in charge, she has returned to WWE and has also aligned herself with Bayley. So here's something that we've really seen. Like, this was the first thing on the show. You had a great match and this amazing post-match. And this really is indicative of the Triple H era of creative, I think, that we're going to see. And it says a lot about it. Dakota Kai was released by WWE because they didn't see anything in her. When I say WWE, like Vince and Nick Khan, didn't see anything in her. Triple H clearly does, so he's brought her back. Io Shirai was ready to walk out of the door, was ready to go back to Japan. Triple H brought her back. And, crucially, he's created a faction, because Triple H loves factions. He loves tag teams and he loves factions. And we've now got a new faction on Raw, seemingly led by Bayley, with Dakota Kai and Io Shirai, going up against Bianca Belair, who was then joined in the ring by Becky Lynch. Becky Lynch, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, joining forces with Bianca Belair. Oh my God, it was such a cool visual. I absolutely loved the way that this show started. I cannot tell you how great it was. It was so, so good. Go out of your way to watch these moments because they were so, so incredible. It sets up some really exciting things for Monday Night Raw. Who's going to also join them? Alexa Bliss? Probably, because she did say on Raw this past week that she's looking to go after Becky or Bianca and go after the titles. So that's a good way to get her into this storyline. But it's completely given this shot in the arm to the Raw Women's division that it really actually needed. So it was an awesome way to open the show. Some really, really cool returns and some very newsworthy returns as well. The rest of the show, I think, Logan Paul beat The Miz. It was totally fine. Logan Paul's frog splash from the top rope to the outside through announce table was pretty spectacular. Bobby Lashley beat Theory in 4 minutes. Great way to keep building up that Theory, lad. The Mysterions beat the Judgment Day because Edge made his return. We got the Edge return on this. He's gone back to his proper Brood style thing. He's cut his hair even shorter. He did a big sort of fire entrance and stuff, and he helped the Mysterions win. Pat McAfee beat Baron Corbin in a pretty boring 10-minute match, but did feature here is how I would describe Pat McAfee's wrestling. His selling's a bit goofy, and he has got an excellent knack of recovering from doing things badly. So he does things pretty sloppily, but he's so athletic that he can work it out and make it look like he was meant to do it all the time. It's actually very, very impressive. And the Usos beat the Street Profits with Jeff Jarrett as the special guest referee in what was surprisingly a bit of a nothing match. It's just fine, just the Usos won. I wonder if they're going to go back to the split of Montez Ford and Angelo Dawkins, which I do think is an error. And then lastly, things to talk about is Liv Morgan beating Ronda Rousey. Shortest match on the card by 10 seconds. Only 4 minutes and 35 was this match. And it was just Ronda Rousey kicking the absolute hell out of Liv Morgan. Liv Morgan doing some amazing selling in all of this. And in the end, Ronda had her in the armbar, and Liv Morgan had her up with her shoulders to the mat and pinned her 1, 2, 3. But Ronda started arguing with the referee that Liv tapped out. And in the replay, the second replay they showed, it showed that Liv did tap out before the 3 count. So Ronda's got a claim, but Liv is still your SmackDown Women's Champion. And then after the match, Ronda Rousey turned heel, which is great because she really needed it. She's not a great babyface, but she is a pretty good heel. So they're going to go with this again. I don't mind because it was a brilliant 4.5 minute match. I really liked it. I think it might actually be my second favorite match on the card. I thought it was pretty spectacular for the short amount of time that it had. But yeah, that's kind of what I loved about this pay-per-view of SummerSlam. Kind of what I loved about it. Looking at the reaction online, people are really into this pay-per-view. It's calling it one of the best SummerSlams of all time. I've seen some people calling it. Our live reactions were like 10 out of 10 show, 13 out of 10 show, one of the greatest shows they've ever seen. And I think what has really sort of, I think what has sort of like sparked that, and I think this is kind of it for me as well, is that there's so much to talk about coming out of it. And there's so much that I want to see Raw, because I want to see the follow-ups to a few of these things. I want to see SmackDown, because I want to see follow-ups to some of the things that came on here. And that's great. Like, that's what you want from a pay-per-view, is to A, be massively entertained, but B, make you want to see what happens next. And I want to see what happens next. So yeah, huge win. Last thing to note, actually, before I do get out of here, Io Shirai has had a name change. So if you thought it was just a Vince thing, no, it's just a WWE thing. So they have changed her name, and she is no longer Io Shirai. She is Io Sky, and Io is now IYO, and it's Sky. And I think it's all caps. That's the way it's presented on WWE.com. But yeah, Io Shirai has had a name change. She's now Io Sky. But yeah, like, there was just so many moments on this that have got people talking, and that is the best thing you could say about SummerSlam, is that it's got people talking, and that's really a great testament. And it's all off that, it's not just the returns, it's not just the heel turns, it is that spectacular visual of, I'm going to say dump truck, but it might be a bulldozer. I'm not very good at this sort of thing. I don't know much about cars and that, so I drive one. And it's that, whatever it was, tipping the ring up. Just absolutely incredible stuff. Ollie will be back later on today with a full review of Money in the Bank SummerSlam 2022, and then he and I will also be doing the podcast review of that over on the WrestleTalk podcast. So go over there and see if that is subscribed. So thank you all so much for watching this video. We will see you later on. Jam that jam.